now going to commence the fourth Mishnah of Mishnah's Biכורים. Up to now we've been dealing with those people who cannot bring Biכורים all together. Now we're going to look at the next section, which is those people who can bring the Biכורים, but they're not allowed to do the Kriya for one reason or another. Let's start the Mishnah. Mishnah Dalet. Elu meviin v'lo korin. The following people can bring their Biכורים, but they're not allowed to read the Parsha. Hageir mevi v'eno koreh. An example would be a Geir, a person who was not originally Jewish but became Jewish subsequently. He can bring his Biכורים because he's chayav in mitzvahs like anyone else, but he's not able to read the parasha. The reason being, because the pasuk says, the pasuk says, Asher nishba Hashem la'avoseinu loses lanu. The pasuk tells us that Kadosh Baruch Hu promised to give the land to our fathers and to give it to us. So, since the fathers, that's the Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, were not his fathers because he was not a Jewish person, therefore it's impossible for him to say a sheker. Others say that in fact that Avraham was really the father of all nations, because we say he was Av Hamon Goyim. He was in fact, in a way, may not have been physically so, but is considered to be the father of all people, and therefore what's wrong? However, they then say that the second part of the pasuk puts an end to it, because it's loses lanu, to give to us. So that part of the pasuk has to have an application for us. That means it's got to be given to the Jewish people, and it wasn't given to him. Therefore, although he became a ger later, he still can't do the kriya. The Mishnah continues, but if his mother was Jewish, then mevi v'koreh, because once a person has a Jewish mother, he's completely Jewish in all respects. It's irrelevant that his father was not Jewish. His father doesn't count. And similarly, the other way around, if his mother had been non-Jewish, even if he has a Jewish father, the fact of the matter is that his yichus follows the mother, and therefore he is completely non-Jewish, and the father is an irrelevancy in that situation, in which case, if his father was Jewish and his mother was non-Jewish, then he becomes a ger. He becomes a ger, and therefore he cannot say the parsha of Biכורים. If, on the other hand, his mother is Jewish, even if his father is non-Jewish, then he is considered to be completely Jewish, and he can say the parsha because he is misyaches. That means his yichus will follow right back to the maternal line, to his grandparents, and back to Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov again. The Mishnah continues to say this is not only a question of Biכורים, it's actually very relevant when it comes to davening, because Shu mispalel, when he is mispalel, that means he's saying the davening in shul. In our davening we say Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoseinu Elokei Avraham Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov. Well, how can he say Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoseinu? It's not his father's. So the Mishnah says when he is davening privately, he has to say Elokei Avos Yisrael, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, who is the God of the fathers of the Yidden. That's Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He can't say Elokeinu Elokei Avoseinu. Ucheshuba Beis HaKnesses, and if he happens to be the Shliach Tzibur, there's nothing to prevent a ger from being a Shliach Tzibur. He can be a good chazan. If in that case he has to say Elokei Avoseichem, because he's talking to the hidden and the basic nessus, in which case he has to say Elokei Avosseichem. So instead of saying Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Avosseinu, he'll say Elokei Avosseichem. Im Hoise Imam Yisrael Omer Elokei Avosseinu. If his mother was Jewish, we're back where we said before, then he can say Elokei Avosseinu because his yichus goes through the maternal side. Now, although that's what the Mishnah says, in fact, when the Eger davens, you'll never hear Eger saying Elokei Avosseichem. It would be very embarrassing, but it would be it's not in fact necessary, because the halacha is not like that. The Rambam says that Eger can actually say Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosseinu, because there's a brisa in the which is in the Yerushalmi, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, who says he can say Asher Nishba Hashem L'Avosseinu, because Avraham actually, it says there V'hoya Shimcha Avraham ki Av Hamon Goyim Nesaticha, and therefore we learn from that pasuk that Avraham Avinu was the father for everyone, like we mentioned earlier on, and therefore there's no reason why he shouldn't say Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosseinu. But then they have the problem about loses lonu, because all right, you might have got over the problem of Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosseinu, but what are you going to do with the problem of loses lonu? On there's a very interesting Mishnah L'Melech that quotes a Maram ibn Chaviv, who says that in fact loses lonu could, according to this opinion, refer to the future. Is that Asher Nishba Hashem L'Avosseinu loses lonu, not necessarily referring to the past, but in fact it means that in the future Gerim will also have a chelik in the land, and therefore it's quite feasible for him to say in the Bikkhurim Asher Nishba Hashem L'Avosseinu loses lonu. And therefore the halacha would be that even if his mother is not Jewish, he can still say the parsha of Bikkhurim. And when he davens, he doesn't have to say anything other than Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosseinu. Obviously this is a chidush to say such a thing in the explanation of the parsha, but nonetheless that seems to be the halacha. Now, we have a situation where a ger does have to say something different from a Yisrael, and that's in the bracha in the beginning of davening, when we say Shelo Osani Goy, or some say Shelo Osani Nochri. The person who's become a ger can't say that, because it would mean that he's selling a sheker. He was born as a ger, as a goy, and became a ger later. So, according to the Mechaber, he can't make that bracha. But the Ramah says you can make a bracha, but not necessarily that bracha. He has to say a different nusach. Instead of saying Shelo Osani Goy, because he was a guy originally, he can make a bracha, and the Meforshim suggest that the bracha would be She'osani Ger, not She'osani Goy. You can't say in the negative because he was made like that. So the Mishnah Berurah paskins, like the Ramah, that he should say She'osani Ger. So you'll find that there is a situation where a ger will say a bracha slightly differently from the rest of Klal Yisrael. The Mishnah Berurah mentions that some people argue that how can you say She'osani Ger? He did it himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't make him a ger. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu controls everything, but at the end of the day, you've got to do your own ishtadlus, and it was his ishtadlus which changed him from being a goy to a ger. So how can you say She'osani Ger? HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't do that. He did that himself. So according to that opinion, he wouldn't be able to make the bracha at all. Now, the is one opinion that in fact you can say Shlo Asani Goy, because it means you interpreted Shlo Asani, he didn't make me to remain as a Goy. Shlo Asani Li Shoir Goy. Although that's a bit of a forced interpretation, there is such an opinion which mentioned in the Bayar Heitev, in the name of the Chuvas Mata Yosef, writes that the Yad Aaron writes, sorry, I beg your pardon, it says that the Mishnah Bayar Heitev quotes the Yad Aaron, who says, who's Helel Halacha Degel Yuchal Lavorach Shlo Asani over Kechovim to Hakavona Shlo Asani She'eshoer over Kechovim. However, the halacha seems to be like the Ramah and the Mishnah Berurah, who says that he should preferably say She'asani Ger, or if one is concerned about it, there are quite strong opinions which say that perhaps you shouldn't make that bracha at all. Just